The holidays can be a hard time for some people, and especially in a year such as 2020, we know that the toll on mental health can be great. So joining me now to speak a little bit more on these topics is mental health promoter Angele from CMHA. Welcome back to the show, Angele.
Hello, Gabriel.
Thank
This
you.
is your favorite time of year, isn't it?
It absolutely is my favorite time of year, and as we're recording this, it's actually snowing and it's staying on the ground, so I'm quite happy. But as I alluded to, we know that this can be a very hard time of year for many people, so maybe we can start and talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so for some people, we often hear Christmas songs and we hear that this is the most wonderful time of the year, uh, you know, spreading joy and cheer. And for some people that is true, but then we need to remember that for others, this can be a very difficult time of year. December, January tends to be months of the year where people really struggle with their mental health. And holidays and grief are a big concern around this time of year. So we did publish some articles on our website and in the media, and we wanted to share with your viewers that if they're feeling or remembering a person that they lost at this time of year and they're struggling with coping with that there are supports out there that people can access, such as the Canadian Mental Health Association and other immediate services where they can talk to people who've also been through that. So we know that this is a difficult time of year, but also want to remind people that there are supports out there, and we can maybe share those at the end of the segment.
Absolutely. We will absolutely elaborate a little bit more on that. And hopefully that people who are dealing with grief have already reached out to some of these services or will do so after watching this. But it's important to remember, too, when we talk about that grief, is that if you lost somebody in 2020, and not everybody that's grieving would have lost somebody this year, but especially if you lost someone this year, the closure wasn't there the same way, where people weren't necessarily around their loved ones or able to be around their loved ones that passed.
Absolutely. And the most important thing when it comes to grieving is really not allowing yourself to talk about the memory of that person. So in thinking about the holidays, it's not, yes, you need to acknowledge, and you may want to take it slowly, depending on how much time has passed with the loss. If it's most recent or if it's been a few years, it still is painful nonetheless. But the recommendation is that, maybe starting new traditions, not forgetting old traditions with the person that you've lost, but also incorporating new traditions so that you have something to look forward to and you incorporate the memory of that person in your new traditions. That could be something that's really, really helpful when grieving over the holidays.
That's a great idea for sure. And of course, there's no shame in whether it's been a year or 10 years, there's no shame in grieving a loss at the holidays, right? There's no statute of limitations on grief.
Absolutely. No, some people say that that they never get over the loss. And some people say that, although they've accepted it and it might be a little bit easier, again, this time of year is usually really tough because you're remembering the traditions, you're remembering the dinners, you're remembering all of the things that are associated with that loss. But, there are things that you can do that will make this time of year a little bit easier for people who are in that situation.
Absolutely. So if someone is going through grief, I know you mentioned a couple things, but what are your tips for somebody that's having a hard time dealing right now?
Yeah, so sometimes connecting with someone, I know we're doing a lot of connecting through social media and telephone. We are in a pandemic right now, so we can't forget that. But if you can reach out to someone who is maybe on a similar situation or has had a loss and can maybe provide a sense of support or is familiar with your situation, that could be really helpful. As far as professional supports, although we don't currently have Bereaved Families of Ontario locally right now, but that is coming soon. Stay tuned for that service in 2021. You can reach out to Bereaved Families of Ottawa, who is offering virtual support to those living in Cornwall. So and we can provide that number at the end of the segment as well. So they are helping people living in Cornwall and the surrounding area supports through this difficult time as well.
Excellent. And of course, you mentioned the pandemic, and grief takes many forms, and a lot of people are going to be grieving a normal Christmas, especially being around loved ones that they may not be able to see this year.
Yeah, so when we're thinking about grief, it's not just losing someone. It can be a loss of gatherings. I know a lot of people are having a hard time with, not going to their office Christmas parties or having their ugly Christmas sweater parties. There are a lot of things that we're not going to be able to do in the same way, not that we can't do them, but in the same way that we traditionally did them. So thinking about grief in that sense is, okay, how do we deal with Christmas 2020? What are things that we can do to make it a little bit easier, but also bring back the joy that we once felt at this time of year? So there's some great things that we can do. One thing that I've done personally is bringing back the handwritten Christmas cards. Naveen is a social service worker student here at the college, and they put out a call to collect, I believe it was over 700, but they're past 1,000 now, wow, holiday Christmas cards that they wanted to distribute to long-term care facilities. And people in our community really stepped up and encouraged their friends and family to handwrite Christmas cards, and they were able to gather those cards that they'll be delivering next week. And I think the sense of doing something, stepping outside yourself and doing something for others can really bring some joy back into your life. Whether you've had a loss of someone physically or you're grieving the loss through COVID of holiday events, thinking about doing something for others can be a great way. And I know personally by doing this, it had been years since I had handwritten cards. So doing that, as a gesture to volunteer, or also just for family and friends. It's a tradition that has been lost with the digital ages. And I would, strongly encourage people to bring that back. Could be a great one.
Absolutely, creating new traditions, making the best of a not great situation that is 2020, but especially the importance of making connections somehow and keeping connections during these periods, because we know that winter in general as well can be very hard on people. So on that note, Angele, I'd like to thank you very much for joining me for this segment. This is actually the first edition of what's going to become a monthly segment here on Community Matters. So we will see you in January, and of course, CMHA is always there if people need to reach out.
I look forward to our next session. Thank you so much for having me, and Merry Christmas, everyone.